Welcome to Timelines of Success, episode 329. This is a special podcast episode. Dr. Jacob Norberg from the German Language and Literature Department at Duke University has asked us to produce an audio-only syllabus and course overview for his students who are blind or have limited vision. So, what better place to create an audio syllabus than a podcast? With Dr. Norberg and his assistant Cinderella in the studio today to discuss his new course, Fairy Tales from Grimm's to Disney. So before we bring out our special guests, here's a bit of background information about Grimm's fairy tales. Long before smartphones, theater, or glowing screens, stories flickered to the light of fires. People told stories into the night, weaving, remembering, and reshaping to create new life lessons. The stories brought warmth, they soothed, they delighted, and endured, passing lessons from one generation to the next. Dr. Norberg's new course, Fairy Tales from Grimm to Disney, opens the door to one of humanity's oldest storytelling traditions. His class is more than just children's tales. It is a journey through culture, psychology, history, fear, beauty, and imagination, told through stories you may think you know from your childhood or watching Disney films. But trust me, the real stories are still waiting to surprise you. Now, Dr. Norberg and Cinderella, welcome to Timelines. Let me start with you, Dr. Norberg. Now tell me what the course is all about. Why should students sign up for your course, and what will they expect? First, thank you, Bill, for taking on this assignment and having us on your podcast. I appreciate it very much. I do too. I appreciate it a whole lot also. It's fun not to be in the fairy tale and actually be on your podcast. So it's great to be here, great to be out. And thank you, Dr. Norberg, for bringing me today. It's so nice to have you in studio, but now let's get back to what your course is all about in your words so those students can figure out if they want to sign up for your course. So, of course, we're going to look into the stories of Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, all of those fairy tales we're going to look at. We're going to actually look at why they survived to present day, what are the hidden meanings, and how can we interpret them ourselves. Both the brothers of Grimm's and where they came from, how they evolved. Those are the type of things we're going to look at. So course objectives, I'm going to hand that over to Cinderella. Cinderella, explain the course objectives. So some of the course objectives are, we're going to go and look at what fairy tales come from and how they've been shaped by history, how fairy tales composed or structured, what do they seek to tell us, what ideas do they have. I mean, my fairy tale is the best by far because Disney loves me. You know, Cinderella, it's great to have you in the studio today. And Dr. Norberg, what if we just have Cinderella tell her story? And I know it's a long story, but tell her story. How did she meet Prince Charming and get married? It's an incredible story. Cinderella, so do you think you can do that and sort of just summarize your story in a couple minutes? Oh, certainly I can. So here's my story. There I was. My mom had passed away, my dad had remarried, and I had two stepsisters who were just terrible to me. They made me do all the work. And then my dad passed away, and it got really bad. One day, the king announced that he was going to look for a wife for his son, the prince. Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. All fine women in the township shall come to the ball to meet my son and dance with him, so he may find a wife. So my stepmom, of course, she wanted her daughters to actually marry the prince. So she did everything she could do along with them to keep me from going. They gave me all sorts of tasks. I finished those tasks, but then they scoffed at me because I had no dress, no clothes. So I wept with my animal friends. And then, out of nowhere, my fairy godmother appeared. So basically, your fairy godmother represents hope. Is that right? That's right. She gave me hope. And this is what happened next. So with a wave of her wand, my fairy godmother created a pumpkin into a coach and my clothes into a marvelous dress. And I had glass slippers. I was on my way to the ball to meet the prince. But she warned me, make sure you leave the ball before midnight because everything will disappear. So I arrived at the ball And wouldn't you know it, the prince asked me to dance. And he asked me to dance again and again. He couldn't keep his eyes off me. And I kept on dancing and dancing. And there I realized it was midnight. I ran. I had to run away from the prince. One of my glass slippers fell off my foot. The next day, the prince announced that whoever fits this slipper will be my wife. Girl after girl in the village tried on the slipper, but it would not fit. You know, there is a lesson here. For example, all these women were trying on this slipper, and they all knew that it was not their slipper. Only Cinderella would fit into that slipper. So then the prince came to my home, and wouldn't you know it, my stepmother said, "We only have a maid," and she was talking about me. But the prince said, "Let me see her." So the prince pulled out a glass slipper, and he knelt before me. He slipped on the slipper, and it fit perfectly. When the slipper fit, he yelled, "It's my bride. It's my princess." And we both got married the next day, and we lived happily ever after. Cinderella, that's one heck of a story. Now, Dr. Nurberg, is there anything you want to add to that? For example, what would you say is the moral to the story? The story of Cinderella teaches us several lessons, and we'll talk in more detail during the class. But one of the basic ones that we always learn is never lose hope, that goodness pays off. But I will go deeper and look at other elements. Cinderella had to be proactive. She had to do things. She had to still have that desire to go out and go to the ball, to meet the prince. So there are many elements behind this. And it's more than just a good and happy story. It's about opportunity. It's about goodness. But there's so much more to it. So attend my class, and I'll tell you more about Cinderella and the other Grimm's fairy tales and what the meaning is behind them. We'll go into more detail. So without further ado, Bill, could you just tell them a little bit about the assignments each week and some of the things I expect? Certainly, Professor. So as far as grades go, 30% of your grade will be tests. Group projects are 15%. The paper is 40%. And the final assignment is 15%. In the first 3 weeks, we will explore specific fairy tales, which I will announce at the time. Then in week 4, we'll ask the question, what is a fairy tale and what are the genres? In week 5, we'll look at beauty and splendor and horror and violence. In week 6, your first paper will be due, and we'll also look at the wonders of the forest and the environment. In week 7, we'll look at historical background, folklore, culture, identity, and a romantic era. Then we'll have another test, and then in week 8, the Brothers Grimm's and literature for children. In week 9, we'll look at fairy tales, psychology, and interpretation, which is really interesting to me. We do have a spring break coming up, but before we take that spring break, we'll go on a test. Then in week 10, we'll look at approaches to fairy tales, the fundamental structure of fairy tales. Week 11, approaches to fairy tales, and copyright. So what are the copyrights? These are very old fairy tales. Are there any copyrights? Did Disney copyright or new interpretations? Are they copyrighted? Then in week 12, we'll talk about literary fairy tales, H.C. Andersen, and your paper will be due then. In week 13, we'll talk about contemporary fairy tales. You'll take your final test. In week 14, we'll go in and talk about Disney and Disney's impact on these fairy tales. And finally, in week 15, you'll have student presentations, and that's your final assignment. So, Dr. Nuremberg and Cinderella, thank you for coming in today. I just want to tell you that I will be the first one to sign up for your course, Fairy Tales from Grimm's to Disney. So if you're like me and you're going to sign up, I will see you at the course. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Timelines of Success.